Zach Everman, the CEO of Pixel Labs, is joining us. Thank you so much to give us some of your time and expertise, Zach.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, brand building. That's such a broad term because it can mean so many things to different people. Give us kind of the elevator speech of what does that mean when you and your company come in and really help somebody build a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. And you are correct in the fact that it's a very broad topic. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. But at a very high level, the one thing that we as a company like to do is take a look at your brand and figure out what it really stands for. Because in the end, like that message that you want to project to your audience is important. But the thing to keep in mind when you're doing it is it's not just a logo. Because what a lot of people think of when you say the word brand is, well, that's what my brand looks like, and that's our logo, and those are our colors, and even down to like sometimes that's our tagline. And they forget that there's a lot more to a brand than just the visual identity. It's important to remember that a brand has a visual, or it has a brand voice, and that voice that you project to your audience matters, and you have to tailor that to who you want to speak to. You wouldn't speak to a teenager the same way that you'd speak to someone in their 30s or 40s. You would use different words when you're describing your services. And that's something that's really important to remember when you're talking about your brand. And ultimately, we want to look at how do we create a brand that people speak positively about when you're not around. Because when you're not around, that's when they're really saying what they feel in their heart.
Those are great points. When we think about how you help somebody determine their brand voice, what are some tangible ways, if I'm new to this game, that I can actually pin that down so I'm making sure I'm speaking the right way to that right audience?
Right, exactly. So, one thing to keep in mind is your services. Like, what are you offering for a service? Because if you're offering, say, apparel for teens or people in their early 20s, so clothes that older adults probably wouldn't wear often. Your conversation on social media or on any platform that you're communicating with them on is going to use it's going to use words that are more trending and more in their realm of their world. And beyond that, if you're trying to sell mortgage loans or cars for that matter, you might use a different terminology in a lot of your branding and messaging because your audience is different. And so your brand voice is going to come first and foremost from who your audience is that you're trying to speak with.
Can you give us an example of a brand that seems to have found its voice and is thriving because of it? Who comes to mind when you think about a success story in that realm?
I think that the biggest thing with looking at some of these things is like I think of the first and foremost thing I think of is Wendy's. They killed it. They absolutely killed it on Twitter by creating this like they personified their brand in a way that is very relatable. They get a little bit sassy here and there, and you can tell that they're not just talking about burgers. They could care less about burgers on Twitter, if you ask me. What they want to do is they want to get people's attention by speaking to people in a way that is relevant to Twitter. And I think that they've done a very good job is that has been tried to be replicated by other brands. And a lot of brands just aren't able to do it. And a lot of it seems forced once one company does a really good job of it.
That is a great example, and I agree that they have really owned their voice on Twitter in a unique and very snarky but very memorable way,
Oh yeah,
which
very
which
much so.
does set them apart. So speaking of social platforms, when somebody is new to the world of marketing a company, especially now when we have so many options, how can we sort through and determine which platform is best? And what about traditional media? Is there still room to throw an ad in the newspaper or put something in a mailer? I mean, how do you delineate where these brands should take their advertising dollars?
That's usually one of the hardest parts to figure out because what happens is brands will start to feel a little bit of FOMO. If they see a new brand or a new platform pop up, they will feel like they have to be on it. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that a brand can make early on, it is feeling like they have to be on every single platform because someone said they had to. If you look at the idea of going back to the examples of age demographics of who your audience is, when you look at Facebook, that demographic has definitely aged up over the time of it growing and maturing. And you're not going to put the content on Facebook that you would typically put to attract a younger audience, such as the early 20s. You're going to pick something like TikTok or Instagram as your platform of choice. So again, and this is probably going to be a recurring theme, but it continues to go back to your audience when you're building a brand, because you want to make sure that you're going to your audience and speaking to them in the places that they are, and not trying to force them to come to you.
Excellent point. If somebody,
And to touch on the point of what you asked about traditional media,
yes,
I think that in some cases it works. I think that some brands fall into a set it and forget it mode with it, which I think is the wrong way to go with that. You have to be very intentional with it, especially because of how expensive it is. TV media is a very expensive media to put your brand on, and it's one of the ones that's hardest to actually track the results of, because there's no way to connect besides putting in a special offer that was just for that channel. There's no way to actually track whether that media is being effective or not. And so you have to be really thoughtful when you're using traditional media like that, and if it's the right thing for your brand.
when a business owner comes to you and says, help, I need to get the word out, sell my products, build my brand, what are those steps that your company takes? Walk us through how you hold their hand to get the brand off the ground.
Yep. So you said two things in there that for us are contradicting. Selling products and building a brand are two very different methods of marketing. And at Pixel Labs, we do focus on the branding side. We want to build people's brands uh, rather than focus a whole lot on selling the products. Because for us, if you build a brand that is successful, the products will sell themselves. And so we focus a lot on the branding side of it. And what we do with that is, the first and foremost thing is start to talk with them about who their audience is and what they stand for. Because once we know some of the basics of who they are as a company, we can start to help them craft what that brand voice looks like. And if they're a new company that doesn't have a logo or brand image, we can then start to craft an image and the visual identity of their brand around those conversations.
Those are great points. Slogans often come with advertising and with a logo. You have a tagline, so to speak, that you hope sticks. Is that going away? Are we beyond Madison Avenue now that everything is so visual, or does that still matter to have that jingle that people get stuck in their head?
So for slogans, in my opinion, slogans are something that are important to help describe to the audience what it is that you do. For example, ours is we help navigate the complex world of marketing, and that's exactly what it is that we do. We try to take this world of marketing and make it simpler for the client to understand and navigate. Um, that may change, and it's something that we don't like to necessarily say this is what it is and this is what it will always be, which is different than, and the reason for that is because right now everything changes so fast, and we may change our services just because we need to adapt with times. Now, if you look at someone like Nike, whose slogan has been "Just Do It" for how many years, that's a slogan that sticks because it's a little bit more broad and it's memorable, but it was also established during a time when the marketing world wasn't evolving quite as fast, and it was a lot easier to stick with a slogan and put it across a lot of different platforms or networks, and get that slogan to stick. Now with everything moving so fast, that gets a little bit harder.
Great point. Very true. When I think about a person coming from, starting from scratch, coming to you saying, I don't know where to begin, and maybe they have a limited budget, what is the most important first thing that a business can do when they dip their toe in the marketing pool?
So when they have a limited budget, we like to talk with them about what's most important to them. Working with limited budgets means that you can't be on as many platforms. It means that you focus your efforts on the space that you feel is going to be the place where the largest portion of your audience is going to be spending their time. So if you look at something like mortgage loans for a credit union or a bank, you're likely looking at spending most of your time on Facebook when it comes to social media, and less time on something like TikTok, because TikTok requires a lot more content creation, which is expensive. But with Facebook, you can do less content creation and more paid ads, which cost money, but is cheaper than the content creation part of it, of what you see on TikTok. So you're going to spend more time on platforms where you can get lower cost ads and reach a larger audience rather than trying to be on every one of the platforms.
Influencers, it's such a buzzword. And when we think of many now being paid to push or promote companies and services, how vital is it that a company to reach that level of exposure consider paying somebody to be the spokesperson or to try to literally influence others to support their company?
I think for me, influencer marketing is there's kind of two different areas of it for me. There's the influencer marketing that you can sense that they're being paid to promote this product and this service, and it feels very forced and unauthentic. But then there's another part of influencer marketing where if you have really good products and people use it and talk about it on their own, they basically create testimonials for you automatically. And I know that, and I don't want to date it by any means, but like with TikTok, they have a thing called Spark ads, where if you see an influencer or someone, anyone for that matter, talk about your product and you want to use that as an ad, you can actually contact them and say, hey, I'd like to use your post as an ad, and then run that content, which is very influencer marketing esque, as an ad for your brand. And I think that those types of influencer marketing campaigns and efforts are way more authentic than reaching out to someone that has 100,000 followers and saying, hey, we'd like to pay you to talk about our product. Because when you do that, it starts to feel more like a spokesperson and less like they actually use the product that they're trying to promote.
You mentioned that things are happening and moving so much more quickly than years past. What does that mean for marketing? If you come up with a strategy or a plan, do we have to scrap it and start over every 6 to 12 months? Or how can you help somebody wrap their brain around this evolution that sometimes moves faster than we can keep up?
So it used to be that you could put together annual campaigns or 18-month campaigns and say, this is our goal for the next 12 to 18 months. And we want to do this by doing X, Y, and Z. And in the end, our hope is that we have these outcomes. That is not really the best way to go about marketing now with how fast everything is going. It's better to look at things in short sprints, have those long-term goals, and then look more in the micro of what types of short-term sprints can we do that are going to have a positive impact on our brand. But if we have to change direction, that effort isn't lost, because it is likely that you'll have to change direction after 3 months, if not by a lot, but by just a little bit, because maybe an algorithm changed on the platform you're using. Maybe there's a new feature that comes out that's a lot easier to distribute content. Stuff like that always changes. And being adaptable and working with an agency too that's also adaptable to that is really important, because if you get stuck with someone that is not adapting with that, you can end up finding your brand falling behind compared to other brands that are working with those types of adaptable companies. Being agile is one of the most important things with building a brand in a marketing world like that, like what we have right now.
That is a great note to end on. And again, if you need somebody who can be agile, Zach's your man. He and his team at Pixel Labs can help hold your hand and walk you through this very complex world of marketing. So thank you so much to the CEO of Pixel Labs, Zach Everman, for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again.